Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, August 11th board meeting of the Chapter Board of Education. The board has been in executive session since 5 o'clock this evening. Can I please have a motion to return to the public session?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second. All in favor, please say aye. Please stand for the public. So before we move on to the agenda, I just want to welcome Andrew Redden, our Assistant Superintendent for Business. This is his first board meeting with us on the stage, so welcome. We're thrilled that you're here. And I'm sure the community is excited to get to know you, and we'll get to do that over the course of the school year. So I will start by saying good evening. And the district is hard at work, preparing for a new school year, and we look forward to welcoming the kids back, although not yet. As I promised my daughter, and I'm sure a lot of you are promising your kids, there's still a lot more summer yet. Which also means that we have time to continue to refine our thinking on this upcoming year and on what you'll hear about tonight. We are very excited for this new school year, even if we're not quite where we hope to be vis-a-vis the pandemic. We're looking at this school year as a return to normal but better in myriad ways. Our school weeks and days will return to normal. Our kids will be able to socialize more normally. And our curriculum will be enhanced not only by the work our amazing administrators and educators are always doing, but by the lessons and innovations we were able to seize upon during the pandemic. We're doing a lot of preparation on our end, and I have a favor to ask of the community. In anticipation of the school year, I did some math. The calendar notes 181 student days. That means there are 184 out of 365 days that the students are not with us. And on those 181 days of school, they're with us for a max of about 6 hours. So we talked a lot up here about the teaching and learning that goes on each year in the district, and we're really proud of that. But so much teaching and learning also goes on in our homes, and this brings me to my favor. Help us with that teaching and learning, specifically by modeling how to disagree. There are going to be disagreements. I'm sure many people will disagree with the choices that we make as a board and administration, a district this year. It's inevitable dealing with unprecedented situations. It's probably inevitable anyway. But what we can do, what we can model for our children, is how to disagree in a respectful manner without name-calling or insult. So that's the favor I ask of you. When you disagree with us, the board, the administration, a teacher, whomever, let's disagree in the way we hope our children will disagree, respectfully and with the goal of finding better solutions. Because disagreement is healthy. It's important even. And it's often through disagreement that we ask different questions, find compromises, and often better answers. But that only happens if we're actually able to speak to each other rather than yell at each other. We're a very friendly group of people up here, and we try our best to be responsive. If you have an issue, please reach out to us, not to Facebook. Even if we don't get to the answer you're hoping for, we will listen and try to help. So we wish you all a wonderful rest of the summer, and we look forward to welcoming back your children in September for another terrific year. And the only other thing that we have under the President's report tonight is item 1.1.1, which is just a minor modification of the district calendar to note that the opening day meeting is actually on the Monday, not the Tuesday. It's the 30th, not the 31st of August. That is just mistake, so we'll be meeting on Monday, August 30th, and to note the board retreat later in September. So can I have a motion, please, for item 1.1.1?
So moved.
Have a second? Any questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
I'm sorry. Who seconded, please?
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I actually will begin tonight with our September opening presentation. I know we have a lot of families and some staff who are watching this evening, specifically specifically to hear how, what we're thinking about in terms of opening based on a recent email I had sent out to the community. So we're just going to begin with that. And so David, if you could pull up my presentation, I will be the only one presenting tonight, but we will have an opportunity for the entire team to be interacting with our parents and our staff around questions and answers, just like last year in the middle of next week. So, okay, thank you. Okay, so I thought it was important that I just begin with some of the answers that I know people are seeking tonight. And so, just a few bullet points, and I'll be talking about more of these in detail later in the presentation. Schools will be open to all of our students every day. We'll be following a regular schedule that we have in place prior to the pandemic. We will have the remote option available for medically fragile students who are unable to be vaccinated and for students and staff who are quarantined. In all of our classes, we will have at least 3 feet of social distancing and individual workspaces whenever that is possible. And masks are highly likely to be required for indoors regardless of vaccination status. And I will talk more about each of these as I move through the presentation. So I just want to share, just so we all have the same understanding, based on a notification sent to us from the Department of Health by Dr. Howard Zucker. Initially, they had positioned themselves as if they would be providing the guidance for us for reopening, but they pivoted and they shared with us that they expected local school districts to make their own decisions and strongly recommended we follow the CDC guidance, and the CDC guidance very clearly says that all children should return to full-time in-person learning in the fall with layered prevention strategies in place, which I'll be talking about as I move through the presentation here. Since that notification, the Department of Education has sent all superintendents a letter letting us know that they possess oversight and authority for schools, and they plan on releasing guidance for us to follow around wearing masks, social distancing, remote learning, transportation, and community transmission tracking. And I share that with you because I have not received that yet. The anticipated date of receiving that is tomorrow, but that may or may not occur. But that could impact what I'm presenting to you this evening and may influence how we're moving forward in a different way. So I did want to share that right at the start of this presentation. Okay, so communication timeline. So as you know, I send these updates out to the community. We post them online. Our first update went out in July. And we also are sending updates out for athletics because the fall season begins on the 23rd for our high school students. I've also sent another update on August 5th, and then we're presenting tonight, and then tomorrow or Friday, I will send a letter to the community looking for feedback on what I've presented this evening, as well as our staff. And then next week, we plan on having meetings with our team where we'll be interacting around questions regarding our thinking in terms of how we're opening for September. We'll have a meeting at 4 for our staff and a meeting at 6 for our parents by webinar. And then our principals will be meeting with our families the following week. We have athletic meetings embedded within the context of the next 2 weeks. And then schools are scheduled to be open on September 1st. Okay, so let me talk with you or share with you what our academic program is projected to look like. So in terms of our indoor learning, like I have shared with you, we have students projected to be 3 feet apart in our classes. We have no potting structure in place moving forward into next year, and the board had authorized for us to purchase singleton desks for our elementary students because we have tables and many spaces that would have precluded us to be able to move in this direction, which is very necessary to open up safely. Students will be moving throughout the building to their different classes. Desk covers will be used for students just as we did last year for those of them who would like to have a clean slate on their desk as they move through different classes. We're going to be using our outdoors as much as possible. Classroom assemblies will only be outdoors. Our large gatherings will be outdoors when we have events for parents. As much as we possibly can, physical education will be outdoors. Instrumental music will be outdoors for all of our students in our elementary, middle, and high schools. And then as we progress into the winter months, we are working right now to have approval to have heated tents at the middle and high school levels. And then we'll also, of course, have plenty of mask breaks throughout the day. Other things that I just want to mention, we're going back to our regular schedule. We'll go back to our regular and normal pickup and drop-off procedures, which would include parents coming inside to pick their kids up at the elementary level masked. Visitors will be allowed to come back into their buildings, provided they're scheduled in advance and they're masked. All of our after-school programs will resume, transportation will resume. Athletics will start right after school again. We won't have that gap of time between the end of school and the start of athletics. And I know this is important to some of our families. We will not be placing twins in the same classes based on updated quarantine guidance that I received from the Department of Health when I had a meeting with them on Tuesday, which I will share in a few moments. And then this is just a picture of what our learning spaces look like over the course of last academic year. So we plan on leveraging them the best that we can. The biggest difference will be at our K-8 level, where we will have students all back in their classrooms 3 feet apart, which I feel very comfortable doing based on the information shared with us by the Westchester Department of Health, which I'll share with you in a few moments. I also want our elementary parents to understand we've been monitoring class size all summer long. We have added sections to certain classes that were reaching the threshold for that particular classes to be ensured we could support kids at 3 feet in our classes. So we have been adding, and we will continue to monitor sections over the summer, so as we approach the start of the school year, we can make sure everyone can fit in the way that we need them to in our classrooms, since we're not potting. Okay, as I mentioned in the opening presentation, we will have remote instruction available. It will be extremely limited. It will only be for students and staff who are quarantined by the Department of Health or by their physician because of exposure, which we're still waiting for information on if vaccinated individuals will have to be quarantined based on our understanding of what that looks like right now. The answer to that is no, but still the Department of Health from Westchester will be sending this to me as they reported in writing, so I will be able to share that with you. And we will have a process that we'll share with the community next week in our parents' meetings on how you can share with us you have concerns around your child who would be medically fragile and unable to be vaccinated, who may need to access remote instruction. So we'll share more about what that process will look like at our presentation next week, but I do want our families who are in that situation to know that we are thinking about that. And that process will actually take place through the district office, not at the building level. Okay, so in terms of our staff, we aren't supporting remote work accommodations, so we don't have any staff that will be teaching remotely in their assignment. Staff who need special consideration because of COVID-19, we've asked them to request a leave. And so I just wanted to share with you right now, we have anticipated only one staff member will be out on medical leave because of COVID-related concerns. I know that some people are thinking about vaccinations and our staff in terms of their vaccination status. So as of right now, our rules have not changed in that the district can't, at this time, require staff to report to us if they're vaccinated or not. So I did want to share with you information from last April that we solicited voluntarily through the Westchester Department of Health process of what our vaccination numbers look like based on self-reporting. And I have two charts here. One is for all of our members who are a part of our teaching staff are covered under our teachers' contract, which would be our faculty, our guidance counselors, our teaching assistants, and then the other is everybody else in that building. So secretaries, administrators. So just so you can get a sense of where we were in April on staff who were reporting to us that they were vaccinated, staff who were reporting to us that they were not vaccinated, and then you'll see there's a gap of people who just didn't report to us at all. So that's our best information right now. As guidance is released or rules change and the district has the ability to seek more information out, we'll take advantage of that. But right now, this is where we are in terms of the information that we have around vaccination status. But what I can tell you is every adult who has wanted to receive the vaccine has had that process available to them since the vaccine was available to us in early this year. Okay, so health and safety. So I do want to talk about the indoor mask requirement. So I guess at this point, all families and our staff should anticipate and plan for having masks on inside. Right now, we're following the summer school guidance, but once we hit August 23rd, and we start fall sports, absent any additional information, our staff and our students and anyone who's visiting our building should anticipate having masks on inside. And so let me talk a little bit around thinking about why we are moving forward in this way. So first, I want to share with you that the Westchester Department of Health shared with me and my colleagues that in terms of quarantining, if students and staff have a mask on and they're next to someone who is COVID positive and they have a mask on, even if they're 3 feet apart, there will be no quarantine. So that is a significant shift in our quarantine practices. It's a significant shift in how our families would approach students attending the bus attending school on the bus. And I think it allows a lot more flexibility in how we operate within the context of the school day. Also, because the Department of Health of New York is recommending we follow the CDC guidance, which I understand is the guidance that applies across the country, and some of our families may take exception to that based on the vaccination rates within our community that may be higher than other places throughout our nation. Our insurance company's position is that we need to align ourselves with the guidance. And the guidance that we have right now at this time is to follow the CDC guidance. And so, in my mind, there's really no justification for us to operate differently. And finally, I'd like to share with you that it's highly likely we will receive required guidance that would mandate us to use masks indoors from either the Department of Education or from the Westchester Department of Health within the next few weeks. So I just want people to have an understanding that this is the direction that we're going in. Absent any additional information, come August 23rd, we will have masks on inside in our buildings, and this is how people should anticipate moving forward. All right, so in terms of our later prevention strategies, so a lot of this is not new information. It's many of the same procedures we used last year. This is our thinking right now. Of course, I've shared with you, masks would be on for students indoors. We continue our temperature check procedures. We do our educational outreach for our students and our parents and our staff. We anticipate, and we're still waiting for guidance from the Westchester Department of Health because they shared with us that they would provide this for us, that we would be using a daily screening process, but it might only be for students and staff who are unvaccinated. We're still waiting for more clarity around that. Hopefully I'll have it by next Wednesday. We will continue our protocols for symptomatic students and staff. We will continue our re-entry process for individuals in our community who are COVID positive with our nurses. At this point, we are not going to allow the locker rooms or the hallway lockers to be used in the middle schools for September. We may make an adjustment in the future, but we're not going to open with students having locker accessibility. Based on that decision, we will be putting some really clear parameters on the materials and the expectations of what students will be walking around with throughout the school day with their backpacks, just like we have at the high school level, but I do want parents to understand that we will begin the school year with no lockers at the middle level. At the high school, there will not be high school lockers available during the school day. After school, those locker rooms will be open for our student athletes. That is part of the procedures that we need to follow so that our students can stay after school and prepare for athletics. So we will open up those locker rooms for our student athletes only. And again, we will be welcoming our parents back, but we will have as many meetings outside as possible. All of our cleaning procedures will remain in effect moving into next year. We might make adjustments if we receive new guidance from the Westchester Department of Health or from the CDC or from the Department of Education in the near future, but we do plan on following our same protocols. They worked for us. Here we go. We, as we shared towards the end of the year, we did upgrade and do maintenance on all of our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, and we're continuing that right now, and that will all be completed before the start of the school year. I want to share with you in terms of transportation We are following the same procedures as last year. We do have siblings sitting together on the bus. We may make an adjustment, but that's where we are at this point. We have students with masks. We have temperatures being taken. We're not changing any of our procedures from last year. The only adjustment will likely be that students will not have to quarantine if they are within 6 feet of a positive case on the bus based on Westchester Departments of Health's shift on quarantining protocols. In terms of food services, so we will be following the same procedures in terms of how we are serving lunch to students that we ended the school year with. Students will be 7 feet apart. We will be using our cafeterias, our gym, our outside areas. We will be providing free lunch for our students. Again, in grades K through 12, we'll follow a similar process as we did last year to have students secure that lunch. We are going to also offer a la carte items for purchase. Really, students will again be able to walk off campus when they are free, so we can reduce the density on campus, so we will allow that again. Mr. Priscilla will be talking more about that with our high school families when he has his presentation. And then, of course, we will work with our youngest students to make sure that they're practicing hand hygiene procedures every time they eat, as we did last year. So these are some things we're still thinking about. So I just want to put that out there. Hopefully we'll have some answers to this next week, but we're still thinking about, will we continue that daily screener and what will that look like? How will we handle attendance at outdoor and indoor events? Like specifically, we have our athletics coming back online. We had a lot of parameters in place on who could attend events and how we did that. So we're still talking about how that's going to happen for the fall season. We want to begin our concert series again. How are we going to do that, particularly as we head into November and December safely? We need to still have our conversations around what our notification process will be for parents when we have a positive case. We need to talk about whether or not we will need to collect vaccination status information from families and from staff if there's a positive case and there might be exposure. Still looking for clarity on that from the Westchester Department of Health. Still looking for clarity on whether or not our higher risk sports will have different procedures for them as they did last year. We're still talking about our elementary schools like to have these large-scale welcome back events for parents and students. We're talking about whether or not we're going to allow those for September. We have not made a decision yet. And then, of course, I'm not clear on what the quarantine requirements are for our outdoor sports. So I'm hoping Westchester Department of Health will share that information with us. That doesn't impact sports beginning, but it would be helpful if I knew what those were. So if we do have a positive case, because the students outside will not be masked, if I knew how to navigate that in advance. So I am hoping I get some clarity around that I can share with their parents next week. So there's going to be opportunities for you to connect with us and to give us information and feedback and to ask questions. So I want to share those with you. First, next week, as I mentioned at the start of this, we will have a parent Q&A with the central office team at 6 o'clock via webinar. We'll send that link out to you next week, and I will mention this when I send out my informational letter to our parents either on Thursday and Friday. And the reason I'm saying Thursday or Friday is because if I get the Department of Education guidance, I'd like to send that all out at the same time. So that's why I'm sharing it in that way. So that's the first opportunity for parents to interact with us around reopening. The building level teams have all scheduled their parent Q&As with our families. So that's another opportunity for you to ask building specific questions of your building administrative team. So this is also going to occur all in the same week. So we're meeting with parents next week. Our building administrators are meeting with parents the following week. We have our first event on campus on August 23rd for our new students and their families. So that's a way for our new families who aren't used to our COVID procedures to come to school together. And we can talk about that in addition to what it is to be a student here in Chappaqua. We've already scheduled our virtual open houses. I didn't think it would make sense for us to have all of our parents come on site in September, given everything that's happening with the Delta virus in the community. So we decided that it made sense for us at this point to make the decision to move this to a virtual open house opportunity so that parents and our staff could schedule themselves appropriately. So that's already been scheduled and sent out, and it's posted on our website. And then our principals will have welcome back coffees in the buildings outside. So this is another opportunity for you to come back to our schools, to interact with your principal, or learn what learning looks like in our school environments, and specifically for them to have to answer any of your questions related to how we're operating within the middle of the pandemic. And then finally, and I will absolutely push this out tomorrow, we have a survey for you to just give us some feedback. So I'm sharing a lot of information with you tonight. You may have some questions that you want us to address next Wednesday. You may read something that you feel like you need to respond and let me know what your thinking is around something that I shared. This is a great way for you to do that, and we will share this out. There's an opportunity for staff and for parents and for students to fill this out. And I will read all of the feedback that is received, as well as the central office team, as well as the Board of Education. So I would really encourage you to use this as a way to share with us your thinking around how we're approaching opening in September. So I just want to thank you. I know that was a really long presentation. I shared a lot of information, but I did think it was important to provide an overview for the Board of Education and the community at this point of what we're thinking, with the understanding we could get information in the next few days that may adjust some of what I presented to you this evening. But we'll be flexible, and we will move forward in the best way possible to safely open for our students. So I didn't know if the Board of Education had any questions or comments, and that would be the time for that.
We're going to be taking public comment in a few minutes. If you can just hold your question, we'd be happy to hear it in a few minutes.
I would like to thank you, Christine, and the administration for your presentation. I just want to note that last year we successfully kept our schools open by being very consistent about following the guidance. And obviously what we see happening now is that the state Department of Health at the state level has taken a step back, but there is nevertheless fairly clear guidance insofar as they have said to follow the CDC. And the CDC does provide guidance on mask wearing. We have the state education department that's coming out with guidance as well. And our own New York State insurance reciprocal has basically told us to follow the CDC. So I don't really see any area for local, independent, unilateral decision-making here. If our insurance company is telling us to follow the CDC, the state is telling us to follow the CDC. I think it's pretty clear that, we do have guidance that we have to follow. I think it's unfortunate that we cannot mandate vaccines. It would be, I know that that's unlawful, but, I think if we could find any way to incentivize that, it could be helpful. I recognize that we're not allowed to do that. But I think that we are following guidance as much as possible, and that's what's enabled us to have a successful school year last year. So I just wanted to reiterate that and to thank you for continuing the process that is very much ongoing.
Yeah, and I think what was clear from your presentation that we appreciate is not only that you continue to follow the guidance, but that you continue to be flexible as the situation changes, because it keeps changing, and we all sort of hoped we'd be done by now, but we're not. And so we'll continue to press on and keep the kids in school and make what accommodations we need to do to do that.
I do want to say, and I appreciate that, in terms of, I know probably there might be a disconnect amongst the community about how we should be moving forward with the indoor mask use. I mean, that's the feedback I received the most on. But I do want to share, the Department of Education is telling us to follow the CDC guidance. The Westchester Department of Health is telling us to follow the CDC guidance. The Department of Health, the New York State Department of Health is telling us to follow the guidance. And our insurance company is telling us to follow the guidance. We have to follow the guidance. until the guidance changes, I'm not going to recommend you not follow the guidance based on what's being shared with me by the organizations that are responsible for our state and our federal approach to reopening. It's not coming from one place, it's coming from multiple spaces. So for me to shift and say we're going to do something different, I think isn't safe. So I'm not going to do it. And I understand that, there may be parents who may have some concerns with that, but I do want to share. We were masked all last year, both indoors and outdoors. And as students played in athletic contests, both indoors and outdoors, for almost the entire year. And we didn't receive one student complaint. We didn't receive one staff complaint. We need to move forward in this way. Any other way is just not an option at this point, unless we receive information from a governing agency that would provide different clear guidance for us to follow, which in the past has been the New York State Department of Health, but we understand at this point that they're not providing any guidance for us. Does anyone else have anything? Jane? Okay. All right, so then I'm going to transition to the rest of the superintendent's report for the evening. So David, if you could bring up the community update.
We will be getting to questions.
CDC says vaccines is the only way.
Sir, we have a public comment period on the agenda, and we'd be very happy to hear your comments then, but please wait for the public comment period.
It's right after I do this work. So I have to, we have to do the code of conduct hearing and the tax levy, and then we have a few other pieces of information we have to talk about on the agenda, and then there's this public comment piece where you'll be able to come up and hear your comments. So our code of conduct. So we have one change that we are proposing from the policy committee on the code of conduct. And that change is considered substantial, which is why you need to have a hearing on the matter. So I want to share it out with the community. I want to, so I'll just read what this change looks like. I'll talk about why we're recommending it, and then I'll share ways that people can provide feedback to us before we share with the Board of Education on August 3rd the proposed code of conduct for the 21-22 academic year. So the language that we're suggesting being added to the code of conduct is that our school administrators will not investigate code of conduct violations that are alleged to have occurred while the student was enrolled in a different building unless the violation constitutes a crime. In the event a crime may have occurred, the school administrator will report the incident to law enforcement immediately. The school administrator may conduct a GASA or their appropriate investigation for an incident that occurred at a different school, even if no crime was occurred, which may result in a safety plan for students. So the reason the policy committee spoke about adding this language to the code of conduct was because over the course of this school year, the high school principal had to deal with multiple incidents that occurred at the middle level. And so we needed clear language around how he was going to approach handling those specific incidents within the code of conduct based on the number of incidents that were brought to his attention that needed to be addressed. So this language helps clarify for families what will happen if they bring an incident to a new principal in a new building that occurred in a previous building. We thought it was really important that clarity was provided based on what Andrew was navigating over the course of this particular school year. So what I would share for the community is that this is the proposed language, this is the hearing, this is what we presented for the community and the board's consideration. And if you have some adjustments or questions or suggestions around that language, then you should email Warren, Hillary, and I your comments and your feedback prior to the meeting on August 30th, so that can be taken into consideration before we present to the Board of Education the final code of conduct. So this time I'd like to ask if any of the board members have any concerns or language suggestions around this proposed addition that you'd like us to speak about, which which of course we will revisit again on August 30th when we put the coding project in front of you for potential adoption.
So I'd like to know if there's any clarity around why that happened this time around and if that was unusual. And what I'm thinking of is whether, and I don't know what the incidents were, whether incidents occurred at the very end of the year that made it difficult or impossible to report to the appropriate building principal
That's a great
when it occurred, and if there's a sort of a gap there that we need to address in terms of giving parents and students the opportunity to bring incidents to our attention when they fall within a certain transitional time period.
I would share with you that almost every incident that Andrew addressed occurred clearly while the student was enrolled in the previous building. And some of the incidents didn't occur within the context of the school building, but outside of the building, it rose to the level of needing to be addressed because of DASA. And so I would also share with you, there have been times in the past where a middle school principal has received a report of an incident that occurred in elementary school. But it wasn't to the extent of what we experienced over the course of this school year at the high school level. So I think that it's important that we have very clear language that our building administrators can use so parents know clearly how we're going to be addressing incidents that come to our attention that occur outside of the traditional building for which that student is currently enrolled. I think that this is just clarifies for families how we're going to move forward rather than Andrew in the middle of trying to address an issue, explaining this to families. So I think it's a much needed part of the code of conduct that was missing based on our experience. And it wasn't one, it was multiple times we had to address this over the course of this year. I don't think it's related to the pandemic either.
Okay, and understanding that student confidentiality is involved, and we don't want to talk about anything identifiable. Because this was so unusual, was it due to one incident that led to this phenomena, or was it just a bunch of unrelated incidents? I'm just trying to get to the bottom of
That's a fair question.
why, and just to follow up so you can answer that in my entire query, I'm just trying to get to the reason why this happened, and if it is for a good reason, that we can address it in the policy.
Right.
I mean, without divulging.
So, yeah, and I'm just trying to, incidents were brought to the high school administration's attention for the most part that were unrelated to each other.
Okay.
And so that can be a product of the way that we structured the start of the school year, and we were really intentional about connecting kids to adults and the comfort level of sharing with the adults in the building experiences that students had that they felt they needed support for. It might have been related to the fact that students were on cohorts and limited interaction was occurring, but as the cohorts began to meld and all come back in, that may have prompted some families to reach out for support. It's really hard because these incidents are all unique to make a connection as to why they surfaced. So many of them surfaced this year. I just can share with you that it happened, and it would have been very helpful if we had this language to help our families understand how we were going to navigate this. Because it's not as clear. So there's a lot of conversations around our process where if we were able to say, okay, look, I want you to understand this is where we are, this is how we're going to handle this. I think it would have been very helpful for our families and for our high school administration specifically. But I also see our principals at the middle school benefiting from this language as well.
And I understand, I just want to add that aside from the code of conduct and following policy and having clarity around that, I just want to make sure without knowing what the incidents are that if there's something that's affected students in a negative way, if there's, social, emotional issues associated with that those students can get support even if somehow these, procedural issues can't move forward. And of course, it's hard to say without knowing the circumstances, but I think that if there have been any impacts to students, that in some way or other that they receive the support that they need surrounding these incidents.
Right. Agreed. Okay, so if anyone has feedback for us, they'd like the policy committee to consider, please email Warren and I before.
Okay. Is it possible, can you guys hear me, for me to ask a quick question?
Yes?
I just didn't know if there was a way to, I don't know if this needs to be slightly rewritten or to clarify that, some of the, obviously, as we talk about the fact that the administrators may conduct a DASA or other appropriate investigations, we have to make sure people understand the delineation of those type of investigations versus what's in our code of conduct. So I don't know if there needs to be some clarity around that opening language, because it may, the way it leads in, may cause some confusion that things that kind of would be covered by both things may not get investigated. So I just want to make sure that our language is very clear here.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense, what I'm saying here,
Okay. Thank you.
That's it. I know it's a little hard to hear on the Zoom, so I can, always discuss further, but I know that we're obviously, I know what it means. I just want to make sure everyone understands it clearly.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. And if any of the audience has comments on the code of conduct, we can take them during public comment. Okay, so Andrew, would you like to talk about the what's on the session? Yes, sir.
I'm the new guy, so apologize. First, just want to say thank you very much to Dr. Ackerman, the Board of Education, and all the community members in that community process. It was a very thorough process, and I hope to live up to the expectations also. Thank you very much. It is not all time I get to present the work of others, right? So on my third day in the district, I'm here to present the to the board for the tax warrant that's on the agenda this evening. As you all know, through the budget making process and being able to the budget, including that budget is the tax levy amount. The board, however, has to come back in August and actually approve the warrant so the towns of Mount Pleasant and Newcastle can raise those taxes. So I'm here to tell you this evening that there's been no change to the tax levy amount. So what we presented to you all for the budget process is consistent. Our budget is $130,460,188, and represents a 1.72% increase. Our property tax levy is $113,934,076, or a 2.03% increase. So those are consistent with the budget making process. You'll see that I noted on the slide here that the tax rates are TBD. I met this afternoon virtually via email with the town controllers from both towns, asking them to verify the tax rate calculations. Those of you know, the board sets the levy, the towns set the tax rate based on the assessed values and the information that they contain at their level. So I'm working to validate those numbers with the towns. I will tell you the preliminary numbers I see are consistent with those that were shared by Mr. Chadwick in the process, which would be a roughly 2.17% increase in the tax rate for Newcastle and a 4.46% for the properties in the town of Mount. Any questions that I can answer?
know that this is sometimes a time where the school board takes a look at the tax levy with respect to fund balance. And so I just would like to ask where we are with our fund balance. And, I think that what's kept our school district in a very healthy financial condition is that we have a robust fund balance consistent with what we're allowed to save in our rainy day fund according to state law. And I just want to make sure that we are maintaining our 4%. And if it's anything over, whether, suppose we could have a board discussion, whether it's appropriate to reduce the tax levy by transferring some of that for that reduction.
So as you may
I mean,
know-
yes, I just want to be clear, yes, the tax levy.
Yeah, so the fund balance is not final until the auditors issue their final report. But as you all know, prior to my arrival, there was a transfer of fund balance used for some equipment that we slated to use for the bond project. That will impact the fund balance to the undesignated fund balance, that's 4% number. So you will be below that this year. We will look to manage that going forward. The reserves are, to the best of my ability at this point, are well established and appropriate for their purposes. So we will continue to manage that as I get to know the district in more detail.
Okay, so due to COVID and unanticipated expenses, it sounds like it would be imprudent at this point to take any more out of the unappropriated fund balance.
At this point, it'd be ill-informed if I tried to make a recommendation, so I don't want to go into stating it.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think it's always worth visiting and talking about. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you, Andrew. All right, so I do want to also acknowledge that on the agenda, Ellen has decided to retire, and I want to congratulate her and thank her for all of her service to our district, especially during this really challenging time, and we really appreciate you, Ellen, for what you were able to do to support all of our teaching us. Thanks, it's been a real pleasure. And so I also want to share my gratitude towards Jamie Edelman, who's here tonight, who has agreed to support pupil personnel services as our interim assistant superintendent when Ellen steps down in November. So I want to thank Jamie, and I'm pleased to recommend her tonight to the Board of Education to fill that role. So we have a seamless transition of support for our families and our staff and our students in our special education program. So thank you, Jamie, for agreeing to support the district in this way. And I know your experience and your knowledge will serve us all very well as you transition to that role for us. So thank you. So there are a few contracts on the agenda I just would like to mention. So we are renewing our contract with Aramark. They are our food service vendor. Naviance, which is our hub of the way that we support our students in terms of specifically the college application process, although it has a career readiness component to it. F&I, we are recommending, we've been having some difficulty redesigning our spaces here at the high school to support our administrators effectively. So we're asking for F&I, who has worked with us on all of our projects, to provide some insights and guidance and some design support so that our administrative offices function more effectively here at the high school level. We have a contract on the agenda to help support us as we head into the second phase of the form-based code. So we're looking for legal counsel from Cy Paget and Russell, and so that contract is also on the agenda for your consideration. And finally, you'll notice there's a contract on the agenda from WSP. We need to continue to do additional work for the DEP as we work towards approving the subdivision of the Zotter property. So this is a contract extension for them to do additional work based on DEP feedback. I also would like to share, let me just skip ahead here, you'll notice on the agenda is a contract between us and a buyer for the property of so that, provided we're able to accomplish the approval process for the subdivision, it's a contract of sale for this outer property of $2 million. So that is also on the Board of Education. Education's agenda for your consideration. And then I wanted to share with the board and with the community that we, in the acknowledgement section, we have a keynote speaker so that for our superintendent's conference day, Dr. Young Zhao, he has been here before. He's a renowned speaker. He's excellent. Adam and I had the opportunity to meet with us to shape our superintendent's conference day messaging around education as we continue to work through the pandemic. And we plan on hosting our superintendent's conference day for our staff and our opening day outside of their conference period. So we're really happy to welcome Dr. Zhao to our district, and we look forward to hearing his thinking on our opening day for our staff. Okay, so now I'm going to transition over to Adam because we have a curriculum recommendation on the agenda. So Adam,
thank you, Dr. Ackerman. So tonight I'm pleased to recommend for the board's consideration the adoption of a new social studies curriculum for our kindergarten through 8th grade. And this recommendation was a result of an extensive process, and you'll see the various faculty members that were involved. So I'm going to walk you through the process just a bit and how we made our decision to ultimately go with TCI as our new K-8 social studies curriculum. So just to give you a little bit of background with regard to adjustments that we've seen in social studies, back in 2013, we got a new federal framework for social studies, which really shifted the approach to teaching social studies. New York State followed with an update in 2014, and then revised their curriculum K-8 in 2016. And what we saw from those revisions was that there were some pretty significant instructional shifts that made the teaching of social studies and learning of social studies look and feel very different from what many of us experienced in social studies class. So the shifts are really towards students writing and reading and discussing social studies as social scientists. And so there's a real shift away from memorization of facts and people and events, and a shift towards kind of the skills and practices of using history to understand the current world and being able to apply it to future events, for example. You see that shift from the breadth of dates, excuse the take, I caught that a little late and I couldn't adjust it in time, from the breadth to the real deep analysis, from recall, where there was a lot of memorization historically, to transfer and connections. And you see we're shifting from textbooks to like a multifaceted tool which has some paper, but also has a lot of digital and print, kind of a dashboard for students to explore. So those are the instructional shifts that we see. For our curriculum, we had leaned heavily really on resources. We didn't have a very specific and clearly articulated scope and sequence K-12 and social studies. So this really is anchored in our district's push to align all of our curricular areas and make sure our students have access to the very best curriculum in all of the subject areas. We have been leaning heavily on the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES social studies and ELA curriculum, so teachers were drawing lessons and units from there, and they were also pulling lessons from the Engage New York inquiry, social studies inquiry. So that was our current environment, but it really wasn't thoughtfully, purposefully centralized and aligned in a way that we had a real arc of social studies learning K through 8.
I have a question about
Yes.
Engage New York. Is that a NICED, State Education Department initiative?
It
I
is.
thought it wasn't.
It is.
Okay.
Yes, New York State Education Department, written by teachers through the state. And the inquiries are actually fairly strong, but it's not really a curriculum. It's a series of inquiry experiences that kids can engage in. So it's a resource for teachers to draw from, but it wasn't a robust enough curriculum for us to really map our K-12 curriculum around. So you can see here on the left side, you'll see the goal of the committee. We pulled a pretty comprehensive committee together. It was led by Mary Devane, who's our Director of Social Studies for the district. She's on the professional development team and is a very experienced high school history teacher, social studies teacher, and former department chair. So you can see the goal there of the team on the left, and you see the membership on the right. We really had all the buildings represented and a variety of grade levels represented, so we made sure that we made the best decisions as we were reviewing the various programs. You can see the timeline here. We pulled together this, convened this committee. We've researched our options, identified some selection criteria, which I'll share some of in just a minute. Met with several vendors, reviewed their materials. We ran a pilot in 6th grade at Bell, which I'll share in a minute. Did some reference checks by conferring with other districts that use these programs, and ultimately made the decision to go with TCI. This is a screenshot. I know that the text here is small, so I pulled some of it out just so you could get a sense that one of the first things that the committee did was to develop criteria of what they were looking for with regard to how they would evaluate these various programs. So you can see things like skills spiraling through grade levels, resources that are differentiated for all learners, materials that are culturally responsive. So those are some of the things, and then you can see kind of a Likert scale with which the committee members rated the various programs. These were some of our front runners, PNW, BOCES, Social Studies ELA, as I described before, the New York State Inquiry, or New York State Engage New York Inquiries, TCI Social Studies. We also reached out to Pearson. Pearson has a K-12 Social Studies program. We reviewed them as well. They didn't make the list of finalists. These were the 3 finalists. So these, I have some screenshots here from TCI website just so you get a sense of what their anchors are. They have like six anchors, like their anchor philosophy with which they design curriculum, and they align very, very nicely with our anchors of our district. One of them is differentiated instruction, inquiry-based learning, standards-aligned curriculum, accurate and diverse content. This really speaks to culturally responsive classroom and diverse voices being threaded throughout the curriculum, cooperative, inclusive classroom. So there are translations available, there's text-to-speech available, there's a variety of accessibility features, so we make sure that all of our learners can access these materials, and then making personal connections. So many of the experiences with which students engage are very collaborative. So we ran a pilot. Once we got to a point where we thought TCI was a good choice for us, we ran a pilot with some willing teachers in 6th grade. Thank you to the Bell 6th grade teachers that ran this pilot. We had all of the teachers in 6th grade involved because they all teach social studies. So you can see some screenshots there. It fits in very well with what we believe good instruction looks like. It's very collaborative. There's integration of paper materials that you can see in the top right, as well as a dashboard and high-tech and low-tech blend, which is one of the characteristics of really good instruction that we look for. So in the end, we're recommending TCI as our K-8 social studies program. We think it's going to really lift the level of experience for the students for the reasons that I shared. And you can see the program costs there. We worked with our current existing budget, in anticipating this expenditure. So this fits it within our textbook line. We already have these funds reserved. So we're not asking for any increases in anything. This is just within the current operating budget for our textbooks for the district. And you can see for middle school, in order to manage the costs of it over time, for middle school, we're going with the 6-year subscription, elementary the 1-year subscription. It's likely we'll bring on the 6-year subscription for elementary next year, and that way we can stagger the lump sum a little bit and spread it out over a couple of years. And just so you hear a little bit about how the textbook purchasing works, these are subscriptions, so it does come with some paper materials, and some paper textbooks, especially at the middle school level, but it also gives us online access to their student management dashboard that they have. So, and then we cycle this in with looking at our other subscriptions that we have. For example, our math program, we have a 6-year subscription, so we time out these subscriptions so they don't all expire at the same time, and we don't have this large expenditure in 1 year. So that's the thought behind that. So you see that recommendation on the agenda is 5.25.
Thank you, Adam, and that's the end of the superintendent's report. Thank you for bearing with us. There was a lot of information that we needed to share this evening, so thank you.
Turn next to the committee reports. Does anybody have anything to report back to the committee from their committees?
Being that this is the summer, I don't have anything else to report other than seeing that legislative advocacy liaisons, there may be opportunities that have been set up by NISBA, the New York State School Board Association, to meet with our federal representatives. So I'll be giving you updates on that, but that's just out there in the next couple of weeks.
Please do, so I will take advantage of whatever's offered. So.
Yeah, and so I may be reaching out to ask whether there are topics that you think we should ask about. I think that one of them would be on the last stimulus bill, which, provided stimulus funds to all school districts except for 2, and we were one of those 2. And I understand that was based on poverty levels, and we missed that by a point or so. And I do understand that it's important to be equitable in how federal funds are divided among districts, but the fact is that our students count. We've done a lot regarding COVID. We've expended a lot of funds to keep our students in school. And so, all students do have needs. So perhaps we should have gotten a little something anyhow. So I will be discussing that on our behalf, on behalf of our residents and constituents. If the other board members have something else, or the administration have other issues that I can bring up, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
And you can, email, and then I'll report that.
That's great, and thank you for your continued work on advocacy on behalf of the district.
Yes.
Really appreciate it, and definitely keep us posted.
Yep, will do.
Any other committee reports? Okay, so that brings us to the public comment period. We're going to ask that those of you with public comments please come up to the microphone just so we can hear you. So we welcome public comments, and in respect for each other's time, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Board members may also be contacted via email or phone, and after the public comment period has been completed, board members may have a discussion among themselves regarding comments presented. So please, before you give us a comment, state your name.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Goldberg. I'm a new chaplain parent, an incoming 1st and 7th grader. I'm very proud to be in this community. I want to thank the Board of Ed, Superintendent, and all others on the podium. I appreciate your efforts. It's a difficult situation. With that being said, you were certainly led astray by the government. Certainly the State Department of Health dropped the ball. They could issue an emergency mandate, cover all schools and school districts. They didn't do it. Westchester County Department of Health has been silent. The former governor was not silent, but he's the former governor. He was for vaccine mandates. So there's still time to get this right. And I know you're in a difficult position. You're waiting and waiting and waiting. I think it's time to take the bull by the horns and move forward. Ask an expert or 2 or 3. Ask a virologist, epidemiologist, scientist, what should we do? I'm an attorney, and I fell on the floor when I said your position is that what your insurance company tells you to do. The superintendent indicated that, and another board member. Well, if it's that easy, and they indicated follow the CDC, on August 5th, the CDC made a statement. It's on their website. Vaccination is the leading public health prevention strategy to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Promoting vaccination can help schools safely return to in-person learning as well as extracurricular activities and sports. It's not unlawful to require your teachers to get vaccinated. You indicated you don't know their status since April. A lot of things have changed since April. The latest variant, there might be 3 or 4, but we have the latest variant, the Delta variant. It hasn't been mentioned yet tonight. Randy Weingarten finally got it right. She said, as a matter of personal conscience, we need to be working with our employers, not opposing them on vaccine mandates. I have a 1st and 2nd grader. They're unvaccinated. And we're thinking about masks. Of course there should be masks. But there should be more. There should be vaccines. It should be mandated. Everyone's asking, what should we do? What should we do? You indicated, well, Commissioner Rosa threw her hands up. Commissioner Zuckerman, he didn't give us any guidance to the Department of Health. So she issued a memo August 10th. What should we do? We're still waiting as well. Although, if you have questions, the Department of Office of Student Support Services recommends the use of CDC's guidance, which I just indicated what they were. Vaccines eradicates the pandemic. You want to go further, they indicate the American Academy of Pediatrics COVID guidance. The doctors, our children's doctors say, All eligible individuals should receive the COVID-19 vaccine. All students and staff should wear face masks. It's shameful. Get some guidance. Ask a scientist. There's a lot of doctors in this community. A lot of people of importance that have the education, that have the skills, that have the training. Ask them.
Thank you.
Don't wait. Stop waiting. Our kids aren't guinea pigs on the front lines,
Thank you.
waiting to be slaughtered. Let's go. There's still time. We got 3 weeks. Let's do it.
Thank you for your comments.
Appreciate your help. Thanks very much.
Would anybody else like to come up and make a public comment?
Hi, my name is Anwar Usmanov. I'm a parent here. I have 2 children in the district. So, my question to you is to whether you're accountable to parents and how much you're accountable to parents. Because I heard the references to Department of Education, Department of Health, there's a lot of departments. But you, since you are accountable to us, I think it's your responsibility to review the information that you receive and the guidance that you receive from those departments. So have you reviewed in depth any studies, scientific studies, statistical studies, peer-reviewed studies on the efficacy of masks? It's a question. Has anyone reviewed these studies or not?
Sir, this is not a question and answer period. We listen to public comments, and as I indicated, we may or may not discuss them after hearing the public comments.
Okay. If you can, I would appreciate if you can distribute such studies that you have reviewed and concluded that masks are efficient and help, because I appreciate there are different opinions about that. My opinion is that they're not efficient. The study, the data science that supports it is murky, best, and the decisions are pretty significant about the health of our children. I understand that you all believe, or most of you believe, that they should wear masks. Well, there are side effects, there are negative consequences for our children to wear masks as well. Oxygen level deprivation and others. And if you're afraid or concerned about being sued for COVID consequences, you should be also concerned for being sued for these other consequences that our children could develop from being forced and encouraged to wear masks. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to make a public comment?
Sorry, one other thing though.
No, sir, I'm sorry.
Follow the state of California.
Sir, I'm sorry.
Governor Newsom, you got it right. Follow the state of California. They mandate the entire state staff faculty to get vaccinated or be tested once a week.
Sir,
Follow
please
them.
email us if you'd like to follow up. Thank
I
you.
emailed you 2 hours ago, all the board members. Haven't heard yet. I hope to hear from each and every one of you.
Well, we're
Have a
here.
good evening. Thank you.
Does anybody else have a public comment?
My name is Sunny, so we're from the same family with Anwar, and we have 2 kids. One is in high school, one is entering middle school, and we're also concerned, I would like also to express the concern about masks, especially for younger kids, even though my kids are beyond elementary school, and I was very pleased to hear that Superintendent Ackerman mentioned that you're also concerned as a parent, not everything is like crystal clear whether this should be done and this is the right choice to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated, and that's the right thing. We should be more concerned about, especially younger kids. They cannot speak up for themselves. Even in the middle school, they cannot understand when it's time to take off the mask and to have some breath, to go outside. They're brainwashed. My kids are afraid to leave the house without the mask, and it's not right. It's not good that they are like guinea pigs, or like some trained soldiers are ready to put on the mask before leaving the house or entering any public building, especially if all of it is not proven. We do not have clear picture. No, you cannot find so many experts agreeing on the same strategy how to attack. The other thing I wanted to mention that you referred to CDC, but what exactly do you mean by CDC rule on mask? What I read yesterday on the website, it says that school and child care program administrators may choose to make mask use universally required. So you may choose or you may not. It's not that you must do it. And then they give criteria when you have to choose to wear a mask. If children are younger than 12 years and are not eligible for vaccination, the other criteria, the number of COVID-19 cases is increasing or high in the school or your community. Is it high in our community to that degree? The number of cases caused by a variant of concern is increasing, or the school and child care program is not able to monitor the vaccine status of children, teachers, or staff. Sounds like based on what you showed us, you are able to monitor what's going on in this community. This is in the most part law-abiding community, and much of the information is accessible. So I wanted to put this for your consideration. Hopefully we'll be able somehow to tackle it in the right direction so that it would meet the concerns of those who are, like the gentleman who spoke up, who is very much into one direction, as well as to meet the needs of those parents and teachers and everybody in this community who are on having different point of view. Thank you.
Is there any other comments? Thank you. Does the board wish to make any comments at this time?
I would just like to say, I appreciate your feedback. Thank you for sharing it. I hope that our community takes advantage of the opportunity that we will share tomorrow to provide us open-ended feedback about what I shared tonight about regarding our plans for opening. We will take all that feedback under consideration. It's very clear we are all not going to agree on the pathway forward, but it's also equally as clear that we all care about our kids and we want what is best for them. And my administrative team is going to do the work that we need to open our schools as safely as possible and make decisions in the best interest of our students. And you have that commitment from me, even if we don't agree on what some of those decisions are. So we will read every piece of feedback we receive before next Wednesday's meeting, and we'll make appropriate adjustments based on guidance that is released and based on suggestions from our community that we think align with what we know we need to do based on the meetings that I've had with the Westchester Department of Health and what the Department of Education is sharing with us what their expectations is of our district moving forward. And I'm sharing that not that I want to encourage people to come back up to the microphone, but what I do want to encourage is for people to use our survey to share with us your best thinking, because that's how we move forward together collectively as a community. So thank you.
Okay. So we're going to go on to item 3, approvals and ratifications. Can I have a motion, please, to take items 3.1 and 3.2 together, which are accepting the minutes of the July 7th and July 20th board meetings respectively?
Okay, I'll move items 3.1 and 3.2.
And second? Any questions?
I'll second.
I think there was a change, but that was addressed before.
Yes.
That's been corrected. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I recommend 4.1 instructional as presented.
I will move item 4.1, instructional as presented.
I will second. I will open the comments on 4.1 by saying, Ellen, we're very sorry to see your retirement on this agenda. We don't have much to say. We're so appreciative of the work that you've done for the district, and we wish you all the best. And we're sorry to have you retire, and we're excited for Jamie Edelman to be taking the helm, and we look forward to working with you in this new role. We've been working with you, obviously, but are excited, and to assure our families that this transition is being approached thoughtfully. And I know, we've already as a board gotten feedback, but everybody's sorry to see you go. And we will be supporting families and the community through this transition, and please do continue to reach out with any questions or concerns, but please know that you are and will continue to be in good hands through this whole process. And any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
I recommend, I recommend 4.2 non-instructional as presented.
I will move item 4.2, non-instructional as presented.
I will second. Any questions, concerns? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Item 5 is our consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of our time by adopting in a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and that item will be considered and voted on separately, thus preserving the right of all board members to be heard on any issue. It is recommended that we approve the following consent agenda. So on our consent agenda this meeting, items of note are a supplemental MOA with the CCT, some fairly standard items, but also the contracts that Dr. Ackerman mentioned in her presentation, and the social studies curriculum that looks fabulous, that was presented to us a few minutes ago. So I will move the consent agenda, which is items 5.1 through, big one tonight, 5.28. Can I have a second?
A second?
Does anybody want to pull anything out of the consent agenda for particular discussion?
5.2 needs to be pulled out. It has to be voted on individually with roll call vote, correct, Lisa?
Yes.
And 5.25, please.
Okay. 5.25 was the other one?
Yes.
Okay. So can I have a motion then to remove items 5.2 and 5.25 from the consent agenda? Okay, I will second that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. So Lisa, can we go ahead and vote on the remainder of the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. So can I have a motion for the consent agenda being items 5.1 and then 5.3 through 5.24 and then 5.26 through 5.28? I will move those items. I second. Any question or conversation about the items left in the consent agenda? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So let's take 5.2 first. 5.2 is, I'm going to just read it aloud so the community knows what we're discussing. Item 5.2 is whereas the Board of Education does hereby approve the execution of the tax warrant to collect the tax levy for the 2021 through 2022 school year in the amount of $113,934,076 for school district purposes, and $3,331,139 for Chappaqua Public Library purposes. So can I have a motion for 5.2?
I move item 5.2.
Can I have a second, please? A second? All right, so Lisa, do we do this as a roll call?
So, Hillary, your vote.
Yes.
Warren,
Aye.
Haley? Vicki? Jane?
Aye.
Very good.
Okay, so item 5.2 is approved by roll call vote. So the other item that we pulled from the consent agenda is 5.25. Okay, so this is regarding the curriculum for social studies. 5.25 says, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the purchase of Teachers Curriculum Institute's curriculum materials in the amount of $142,275.35 and authorizes the BOE president to execute that agreement. Can I have a motion for 5.25?
I move 5.25.
I will second. Questions or comments?
So you mentioned that the middle school is a 6-year contract and the elementary school is a 1-year contract. So why not 1 year?
I'm sorry, I heard the first part of that, the 1-year contract and the 6-year contract. You're right, I didn't hear the last part of the question.
Why not a 1-year contract for the middle school? Why would we just do a 6-year contract?
Yeah, what we'd like to do is a 6-year contract with both, but it's cost prohibitive. It's a much better deal to go with a 6-year contract. When you break it down by year, you get a better, you pay much more for the 1 year as if you bought it year by year. So if we did the 1 year and the 1 year, you pay a significant number. I don't have the numbers right in front of me now, but we considered that. And you get a much better cost or value across the 6 years because they want you to subscribe for the full 6 years, of course.
Then why are we not doing 6 years for the elementary schools?
Just to be able to spread out the costs over time, it would eat up my entire textbook line for the year to do the 6 years for both of them. So it spreads out it allows us to implement KE all in 1 year, and then next year we'll do the 6 years for the elementary school. So we can spread out that cost over time.
So this is more of a new delivery method?
Well, it's an entire package. It's an online dashboard of resources. It's packaged as units, the true spiraled curriculum, so the skills are mapped K through 8 with all the way down to instructional experiences for the students and the teachers. So the current curriculum, we've got a lot of teacher discretion, and they're pulling resources from a variety of places. And this will have a really consistent experience for students by unit, K through 12. And some of it is high-tech, as I described, as the dashboard. Some of it's low-tech. It's got activity cards. It's got atlases. It's got a variety of kind of cut-and-paste low-tech activities that the students do.
And how is the content different than what we're doing now? Are there any significant content differences?
Yeah, the main content difference is the consistency and how purposeful the curriculum spirals from kindergarten through 8th grade. Anytime we have a curriculum that has a lot of teacher discretion involved, it's much harder to have cross-district conversations by grade level, provide professional development, review student work, make adjustments to your curriculum, lift the level every year because you've got that level of continuity across the district. So right now it's a curriculum that has kind of guidance documents and resources that teachers pull, but it's not mapped as consistently as we need it to be.
And part of this work is aligned with the strategic plan, which is our curriculum alignment, and this is one of our areas that we need to be addressed. So that the process that Adam undertook with the staff is to address that area that was identified as a target area for us by our strategic planning committee.
I have concerns not seeing the content area of what we're trying to change here, but I believe in Adam. I'm not sure who else did this, but Adam thinks it's good that I will go along. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of item 5.25, please say aye.
Aye.
So moving on to item 6. Can I have a motion to take items 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3 together? These are acknowledging contracts approved by the superintendent per board policy 6085, purchasing and bidding, all of which were discussed during the superintendent's presentation. I will move 6.1 through 6.3.
I'll second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have nothing under item 7 tonight. Under item 8, the financials. Can I have a motion for items 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3? This is acknowledgement of the claims auditor report for June of 21, the revenue status report for July of 21, and the appropriation status report also for July of 21.
I move the acknowledgement of the financials.
I will second that. Any questions, concerns, comments? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So notice of future meetings. Our next meeting will be Monday, August 30th. That's the change that was approved. At 10:30 a.m. That is our opening day meeting. That is the first day of school, although not for the kids. And that will be at Horace Greeley High School. It says academic comments. I think it's highly likely we will be here. And that will be changed. And then our next meeting after that will be Tuesday, September 14th at 7:30 p.m. Again, please note that our meetings are usually Wednesday. This is a change due to school closure the next day. That will be a Tuesday, and that will also be at 7:30 p.m. And I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:59 p.m.
Okay, I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
I will second that. All in favor, please say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Have a good night.